Max Gordon was a really important figure in the London art world in the 1960s, 70s and 80s. And we're here at Tate Modern tonight to celebrate his memory. He died in 1990. His brother David has published a book called Max Gordon, Architect for Art, and it celebrates Max and his achievement as an architect, but it also talks about Max as a figure in the art world. Through the 60s and 70s, he was a really cosmopolitan figure. He trained as an architect in London, and then he went to New York, where he developed his architecture, and he worked with one of the great practices working in New York in the 1950s, Skidmore, Owings and Merrill, and in particular with an architect called Gordon Bunshaft. So when he came back to London in 1962, he brought with him the language of modernist America, and he applied that in the work that he was doing. For 20 years, he worked in a practice that was essentially a commercial architecture practice. But in 1980, he went independent. And at that point, he started to do designs for galleries, for his artist friends who wanted their apartments renovated. And in 1984, of course, he was chosen by people who were his friends, Doris and Charles Saatchi, to convert a former paint warehouse in St. John's Wood into what became known as the Saatchi Gallery, 98A Boundary Road. And that gallery, which was a huge space, 30,000 square feet, when you think about Tate Modern today, it was almost the size of one floor at Tate Modern, essentially. And its sudden arrival in London, this very beautiful space created by the Saatchis, designed by Max, really transformed London. And I was really honoured to be asked by David to write something about Max, both as a friend of artists and also as an architect who had an enormous influence in the art world, because there are many of the galleries that we've seen created in the 1990s and in the last decade were very much built on the principles that Max developed in his own practice. Very simple spaces, often built on a golden section or on a double square. Beautiful daylight. Max was always very keen on daylight. And he was always intent that the space shouldn't dominate the art. He was really always very committed to the idea of having a big space in London in which to show contemporary art. And so it's appropriate that we should do this party to launch this book here at Tate Modern.